The cockpit hums with the quiet vibration of the ship's engines as Marcus Owens stares intently at the swirling galaxy outside. His brow is furrowed, his focus sharp as he watches the vibrant blue, violet, and gold streaks of the alien sky. Above him, each pulse of the ship's engines sends a subtle jolt through the seat, but it barely registers in his mind. His pulse is racing too fast for that. This was the moment he had trained for. The first human contact with an alien species, the Vreni. A species that had been cut off from the universe for centuries, their world untouched by outsiders until... "Now like and subscribe, folks," Marcus mumbles under his breath, trying to shake the unease bubbling up in his chest. He cracks a half-smile, but the nerves are hard to hide. "You won't want to miss the crazy stuff that's about to go down." He taps the comms system again, double-checking his connection. The anticipation fills the air, a mix of excitement and the dread of the unknown. Outside the ship, the planet is nothing like Earth. The surface stretches endlessly, barren and rocky, with jagged mountains rising far in the distance, their peaks obscured by a heavy purple mist. Strange, glowing plants dot the landscape, casting a soft, eerie light across the terrain. The planet's atmosphere feels thick, almost alive with a weight Marcus can't explain. The air is heavier than any place he's been, and yet the view is breathtaking, otherworldly in its beauty and terror. Marcus inhales deeply, staring out at the scene. "Here we are," he whispers to himself, glancing down at the communication device in his lap. He runs his finger over the map, confirming the coordinates once more. This is it, the site of first contact with the Vreni. The data shows he's right on target. The moment he's been waiting for is just around the corner. Marcus Owens is no stranger to making history. He's been with the Federation's first contact team for years, landing on Titan's frozen moon, finding alien relics in forgotten corners of distant solar systems. Yet nothing quite compares to this mission, nothing like the weight of encountering a completely isolated race, living alone on a distant planet for millennia. A human, the first to ever make contact. It should be thrilling, but Marcus can't shake the chill in his bones. "Why did I sign up for this?" he mutters to himself, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. He leans back in his seat, taking a moment to steady his breath. It's not fear. At least, he tells himself that. It's just the unknown, the excitement that comes with the first step into history. He pushes a button on the comms panel, the frequency crackling as he opens the channel to the Vreni. "Initiating a first contact," Marcus says aloud, his voice steadier than he feels. The ground beneath the ship trembles lightly, causing him to grip the console tighter. Through the cockpit window, he watches the mountains in the distance stir, a deep, resonant hum filling the air, a sound almost too low to register with the ears, but somehow felt in his bones. The tremor intensifies, and Marcus knows something is happening. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the hum stops, and the sky darkens. Marcus freezes. In the distance, something emerges from the haze. A massive, towering figure, cloaked in the shifting mists. The figure stands at least 8 feet tall, with elongated limbs that stretch and move with an unnerving grace. Its skin shines with a metallic silver glow that reflects the dim light of the alien world. Its face is obscured by a veil of smoke-like material, but 2 bioluminescent eyes gleam from underneath. The eyes, bright, piercing, catch Marcus's gaze, and for a moment he's paralyzed. He can't look away. The figure steps forward, causing the ground to tremble beneath Marcus's feet, the vibrations intensifying with each step. Through the comms, a voice, deep and resonant, booms into the ship, its tone heavy, filled with centuries of weight. It carries through his mind, chilling his very core. "You have come, human." Marcus's breath catches in his throat. His heart pounds so loudly he can barely hear the voice echoing in his mind. The sound is foreign, yet it feels like it's speaking directly to him. bypassing language entirely, touching something deep within. The figure's steps grow louder as it draws closer. Marcus's eyes are locked on those glowing, unblinking orbs, and for a moment it feels as if time has stopped. The ship is still, but his heartbeat pounds in his ears. The moment that he had trained for, prepared for, it's happening now. Then, the ground shakes beneath him, stronger this time, more violent. His hand trembles as he grips the console harder, trying to steady himself, his mind racing. What is happening? His fingers hover over the communication panel, unsure if he should speak or just wait. But something feels off, something deeper than just the power of the moment. The figure stops. Its gaze never leaves Marcus's eyes. The silence is unbearable, and Marcus can feel the pressure of that unspoken energy in the air, swirling like a storm waiting to break. And then the voice speaks again, but this time it's softer, more dangerous. A whisper carried on the wind. "You have touched the forbidden." Marcus's hand shakes as he struggles to keep control of the ship. The air around him seems to grow heavier, thicker, as though the very atmosphere of the planet is alive with an ominous presence. His eyes never leave the figure, and the realization hits him like a punch to the stomach. What did he just step into? What was it that he had awakened? His mind races with questions, but before he can form another thought, the ship shakes violently, as if the world itself is rebelling against his presence. The strange figure, this towering alien being, still stands there, unmoving, as the energy around them crackles. The communication panel flashes. Marcus tries to speak, but his voice catches in his throat. Something in the air, something about the figure seems to demand complete attention. Marcus is no longer in control of this moment. It feels as if fate itself is holding him captive. Suddenly he feels it, something dark, something forbidden about to unfold. He cannot escape it. Not now. Not with the creature staring him down, its glowing eyes locking with his. Something has just changed. Forever. The sky darkens even further, and a sense of dread fills the air. Something ancient, something far beyond Marcus's understanding, is now awake. The figure's eyes burn into him, and as a whisper of wind carries through the cockpit, Marcus hears it. The price of touching the forbidden is steep. And just like that, the world he knew, everything he had prepared for, becomes irrelevant. Marcus sat frozen in the cockpit, his hands still gripping the controls, but his mind far away. The figure outside, the massive Vreni, was no longer just an enigma. It had spoken, and in that moment everything about this mission had changed. His pulse quickened, and he forced himself to open the comlink. Hello, this is Marcus Owens from the Federation," he said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts racing in his head. "I'm here on a peace mission, to establish communication." The words felt inadequate. He had rehearsed them 100 times in his mind, but now that the moment had arrived, they seemed so trivial. The figure didn't respond immediately, its glowing eyes flickering with some strange recognition. It didn't look directly at Marcus, but the way it moved, as if it knew exactly where he was, sent a shiver down his spine. Slowly, its long, elongated hand reached out, the air shimmering as it passed through. For a moment, Marcus thought he could feel the strange force that surrounded the figure, like a ripple in the air, pulling at the very fabric of reality. "I know who you are," the figure's voice rumbled, deep and heavy, like the growl of some great ancient beast. "But we do not trust." Marcus's heart skipped a beat, a knot forming in his stomach. What had he expected? He had read the reports, seen the data. This was the first contact, but nothing could have prepared him for the weight of the Vreni's words. He took a breath, trying to steady himself, then replied, "Trust. I'm here to help." The alien's response wasn't what he expected. It chuckled, a sound that was so deep it reverberated through the cockpit. It was like thunder rolling across the sky, distant yet ominous. "You believe you are here to help?" The voice seemed to shift, the deep rumble turning almost mocking. "You are a fool, human." Marcus blinked in disbelief. A fool? He wasn't sure if he was being insulted or tested, but his heart was racing now, the weight of the situation sinking in. He wasn't sure how to respond to that, so he just stared, waiting for the figure to continue. Before he could speak again, a softer voice came through the comms, a whisper that seemed distant, yet somehow sharp. "He does not know the ways. He's like a child." The words hit Marcus like a slap. His brow furrowed, caught between a surge of frustration and embarrassment. I know my way around first contact. I've been trained for this," he said, his voice a little more defensive than he meant it to be. The alien's voice, this time filled with amusement, rumbled again, almost playfully. "Trained? For what? To speak to shadows?" Marcus blinked. "Shadows? What? What are you talking about?" His voice wavered. He had prepared for this. He had studied for months. Cultural differences, the language of gestures, understanding alien customs, but nothing had ever prepared him for this. The Vreni were mysterious, yes, but nothing like this. A snort echoed in the comms, a noise full of quiet laughter, and the figure, no longer an intimidating presence, seemed to soften. The alien took a step closer, and the veils of smoke surrounding. Its face began to dissipate, revealing intricate geometric patterns etched across its metallic skin. The patterns shimmered as they caught the low light of the alien world, each marking resembling something ancient, like symbols of long-lost civilizations. The alien's voice was softer now, contemplative. "Tell me, human, how do your kind speak? To shadows?" Marcus stammered, at a loss for words. He had no idea how to answer that. He tried to focus, to gather his thoughts. "We speak to each other. Through words, gestures, sometimes even touch," he finally said, his voice trailing off as he wondered if he had just said something wrong. The alien stood still for a moment, its glowing eyes flickering in a way that felt almost interested. The air seemed to grow, thicker, as though the question had triggered something deeper within the Vreni. Silence stretched between them, heavy and taut, until the alien leader spoke again. "Touch, you say?" The leader's voice was quiet, almost gentle, like the first rays of dawn piercing the darkness. There was something in its tone, something Marcus couldn't quite place, that made his chest tighten. The Vreni had strong cultural taboos against touch. Marcus knew that, but this felt different. There was an openness, a curiosity in the leader's voice. Marcus's mind raced, wondering if this was an opening, an invitation. Could he bridge that gap? Could the leader be willing to break a cultural norm? Or was he making a huge mistake? But before he could speak, the air around them shifted again. It was subtle at first, a sudden heaviness filling the atmosphere. The ground began to rumble beneath him, the vibrations growing stronger with each passing second. The alien stepped back, its posture shifting from curious to cautious, a strange stillness overtaking it. The air seemed to crackle with energy, like the calm before a storm. "We will speak more later," the alien said, its voice low and firm, yet tinged with something unsettling. "There is something you must know." A deep, thunderous roar echoed from the distant mountains, shaking the ground beneath Marcus's ship. The ship's hull groaned, as if it too could feel the change. Marcus's eyes darted around, and he felt a cold shiver run down his spine. This wasn't just a cultural exchange. Something else was happening. The alien leader turned, its eyes glowing with an intensity that cut through the tension. "You have awakened something ancient, human. You must leave, or you will never leave." The warning hung in the air like a shadow over the conversation, and Marcus's pulse quickened. His hand hovered over the controls, unsure of what to do. What did the alien mean? What had he truly uncovered? And most importantly, what was coming? The ground trembled again, this time with more force. The mountains, once distant and silent, now seemed to stir with life. Something was coming. The distant roar grew louder, more distinct. It was unmistakable now, a creature or force unlike anything Marcus had ever encountered. His heart pounded in his chest as the comms crackled with static. Something was approaching. The alien leader turned back to him, their eyes locking once again. "The mountain will not forgive," the leader said, its voice filled with warning. "And neither will we." The air shimmered with tension as the ground shook beneath Marcus's feet. The mystery of the Vreni, the forbidden knowledge, and whatever was coming from the mountains. It all seemed too much to process. But one thing was clear. Marcus wasn't just a visitor anymore. He was part of something far bigger and more dangerous than he could ever have imagined. The air around Marcus crackled with an almost tangible tension as the alien leader stepped closer, its movements slow, deliberate, as if testing the boundaries of something fragile between them. Marcus felt his pulse quicken, the world seemingly pausing around him. There was something about the way the leader's luminous, bioluminescent eyes locked with his that held him captive. For that moment, there was no distance between their worlds, no alien barrier. There was only this unspoken connection that seemed to pulse with an energy all its own. The leader's voice broke the silence, deep and resonant, humming in the air. "Touch, you say it is powerful. We do not touch." Marcus swallowed, suddenly aware of how vulnerable the moment felt. He struggled to find the right words, feeling the weight of the leader's gaze on him. Well, human touch is important. It's how we connect with each other. It's how we communicate what words can't express." The leader cocked its head slightly, a gesture that seemed almost human, as though it were trying to understand this strange concept. "You are curious," it said, its voice low, almost a purr. "You dare to touch when others would hesitate." Marcus looked away, unsure of how to respond, his mind spinning with questions. "I've always been curious." The leader's lips twitched, and Marcus could have sworn it was trying to smile, though the alien expression was nothing like anything he had seen before. "Curiosity is dangerous." It paused for a long moment, the weight of its words settling between them. "But perhaps it is also beautiful." Marcus's heart skipped a beat, and the air around them seemed to shift. Was it his imagination, or did the alien leader's presence feel warmer now, as though it were drawing closer in more ways than one? He couldn't tell whether it was the strange atmosphere of the planet or something more, something deeper, something between them. He couldn't deny that he felt it too, that odd pull in the air, the unspoken bond that seemed to grow with every passing second. Before Marcus could gather his thoughts, the leader's voice broke through again, softer now, tinged with an almost playful curiosity. "Tell me, human, do you always wear such elaborate coverings?" The leader gestured toward Marcus's spacesuit, which, to the alien, must have seemed like a cumbersome shell, an unnecessary armor for a being of flesh. Marcus laughed, feeling the tension in his chest ease for the first time since arriving. "This is standard attire for exploration. It's not exactly fashionable." The leader stared at the suit with wide, unblinking eyes, its gaze filled with genuine curiosity. "Fashion, another strange human concept. Perhaps your kind is all just trying to hide behind your skins." The comment took Marcus by surprise, and he laughed again, the sound bubbling up uncontrollably. "I'm not sure we're as good at it as you are. Your skin, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. It's like it's alive." The leader's eyes flickered, a soft acknowledgement passing between them. "It is a gift from the mountains," it said, its tone shifting to something softer, almost reverent. "The markings you see are not mere decoration. They hold history, memories of my people." Marcus's curiosity was piqued. "So your people's stories are written on your skin?" The leader's expression softened, and for a moment Marcus could sense a vulnerability beneath the surface. "Yes, each marking represents a story, a memory, a lesson," it explained. "Perhaps one day I will share them with you." Marcus felt a strange, unexpected sense of intimacy in the leader's words. A deep connection began to form, one that went beyond just a peaceful first contact. He could feel the weight of its history, the depth of its culture, and a part of him wanted to learn, to understand it all. But before he could speak again, the world around them seemed to shift once more. The ground beneath Marcus's feet vibrated, a low rumble that grew steadily louder. Instinctively, he turned toward the distant mountains, his stomach tightening, as he noticed the strange pulse of energy radiating from them. It was subtle at first, like the planet itself was alive with something ancient, something beyond his understanding. The alien leader stiffened beside him, its body tense and its eyes narrowed as though sensing the same disturbance. "What's happening?" Marcus asked, his voice betraying his concern. The leader took a step closer, placing a hand on Marcus's chest in an unexpected gesture. It was oddly intimate, despite the alien context, as though it was grounding him, preparing him for something he wasn't yet prepared for. "There are forces at work that you do not understand," the leader said, its voice filled with a strange, "Wait, forces that have always been here." Before Marcus could respond, the ground shook violently beneath them. The tremor rattled the ship's hull, sending a shiver of panic through his body. A deep, resonant growl echoed through the air, a sound so primal, so terrifying, that it sent chills down his spine. Something was coming, and it was not something he could have prepared for. He turned back toward the leader, the intensity in, its glowing eyes sending a wave of unease through him. "What is it?" Marcus asked, his voice low and urgent. The leader stood still for a moment, its gaze never leaving the distant mountains. "You have touched what should not be touched," it said, the weight of its words like a punch to Marcus's gut. "And now you must face the consequences." Marcus's stomach tightened, and a sense of dread crept into his chest. The air around them felt thick, charged with an energy he couldn't understand, but which clearly held enormous power. Whatever was coming, it wasn't just a natural disaster or some random event. It felt purposeful, like the planet itself was reacting to something Marcus had unknowingly unleashed. And then, from the depths of the mountain range, a massive shadow appeared, huge and dark, moving with a terrifying speed. The shape was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen, and the air around it seemed to ripple with the power it carried. His breath caught in his throat as the shadow loomed closer, its presence growing more formidable with each passing second. The leader turned to face Marcus, its eyes glowing with an eerie intensity. The calm, mysterious aura that had surrounded it earlier was gone, replaced by something darker, something that told Marcus that the stakes were much higher than he had ever imagined. "You have awakened something ancient, human," the leader warned, its voice now tinged with urgency. "And now you must face the consequences." Marcus's heart pounded in his chest as the shadow grew larger, its form taking shape in the darkness. Whatever it wasn't just a challenge. It was a threat. A force that would test him, his courage, and his ability to survive in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. The ground shook again, more violently this time, and the roar of the shadow grew louder, filling the air. Marcus's stomach twisted in fear, his mind racing. What had he gotten himself into? The shadow loomed closer, and the leader turned to him once more, its eyes filled with a mixture of warning and something else, something unreadable. "It has already begun," the leader said, its voice barely above a whisper, and then the world seemed to fall away as Marcus prepared to face whatever was coming. The air was thick with tension, and the weight of the alien world seemed to press down on him. The storm that had been brewing in the distance finally arrived in full force. The wind howled, violent gusts ripping across the barren landscape, sending dust and debris swirling through the air. Marcus's spacesuit whipped around, the material flapping as the storm's power tore at it. His heart raced as he struggled to maintain his footing, the wind pressing against him with such force that it felt as if the very atmosphere was trying to push him away. The alien leader, standing tall and unyielding against the tempest, was unaffected. Its eyes, glowing with an inner fire, were fixed on the darkening horizon. "What's happening?" Marcus shouted over the roar of the wind, his voice barely audible above the chaos. His hands gripped the controls, and he took an instinctive step closer to the leader, hoping to shield himself from the storm's wrath. The leader, unfazed, merely gestured toward the mountains, its voice low and steady, cutting through the cacophony around them. "The mountains are waking," Marcus's confusion deepened. "What do you mean, waking?" he demanded, stepping closer to the leader. The ground beneath him trembled again, the vibrations more violent this time, sending a ripple of unease through his body. A deep, guttural rumble echoed through the landscape, reverberating in the air like the growl of some ancient beast. The leader's gaze met Marcus's, and for the first time, Marcus saw a flicker of something in the leader's eyes, something like fear. It was fleeting, but it was there, and it made Marcus's stomach tighten. "What's in the mountains?" he asked again, his pulse quickening with a new sense of urgency. The leader hesitated, its body language tight, as if it were weighing a decision. "You are not the first to come here, human," it said finally, its voice heavy with the weight of its words. "Those who sought to challenge the mountain's power were consumed. Those who touched its secrets were bound." Marcus blinked, trying to process what the leader was saying. Consumed, bound. His mind raced, connecting the pieces. What does that mean? What is in the mountains? The leader's gaze hardened, and it took a step back, as if preparing for something inevitable. The mountains are not just land. They are a living force, ancient and powerful. Those who try to unlock its mysteries, they are not allowed to leave. The ground rumbled again, this time with more urgency, and the storm intensified, its howling winds sweeping across the landscape with a ferocity that shook Marcus to his core. The world around them seemed to grow darker, the atmosphere thickening as the mountains loomed like silent sentinels, watching, waiting. Just then, a chorus of voices erupted from the shadows surrounding them, and Marcus spun around, his breath catching in his throat. Figures, smaller than the leader but just as imposing, emerged from hidden alcoves in the mountainside. Their faces were grim, their expressions filled with suspicion and disdain as they regarded Marcus. Their eyes were narrowed, and their postures radiated hostility. One of them, a tall Vreni with sharp features and a voice like gravel, growled, "What is this?" Its voice was harsh, cold, as it fixed Marcus with a glare that sent a chill through his spine. The leader stepped forward, raising a hand in a gesture that seemed to demand silence. "He is not like the others," it said, its voice authoritative. "He does not seek to harm us." The gathered Vreni remained unconvinced. Their eyes narrowed, and they muttered among themselves, casting wary glances at Marcus. The leader's words had little effect. They could see him for what he was, a human, a being from a different world, and they were unsure of his intentions. Marcus felt a wave of guilt wash over him. He hadn't expected this division among the Vreni. He hadn't thought that his presence here would create such a stir. He hadn't thought about what it would mean for the leader, for the Vreni people. Now he could see the deep cracks between them. His arrival had not been welcomed. It had caused a rift. The leader's eyes flicked to Marcus again, and for a brief moment their gazes locked, an unspoken understanding passing between them. It was in the way the leader's shoulders seemed to relax just slightly, as though it had accepted something. But then it spoke again, its voice low and almost sorrowful. "This is not your fault," the leader said, almost whispering. The words felt like a balm to Marcus's racing thoughts, "but you have awakened something that may destroy us all." The weight of the leader's words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. He hadn't meant to cause this. He hadn't known that his arrival would stir such power, such fear. And yet, here he was, caught in the middle of a conflict he didn't fully understand. There was no denying it now. This wasn't just about first contact anymore. This was about survival. Despite the growing tension and the ominous presence of the other Vreni, Marcus felt his heart race in a way he hadn't expected. It wasn't just fear. It was something else, something raw and powerful, and it was centered around the leader. There was something undeniable between them, something deeper than either of them was willing to admit. In that brief moment of connection, Marcus felt a spark, an emotion that transcended their cultural divide. Before he could respond, the wind died suddenly. A heavy silence fell over the group, as if the storm itself had been stilled by some unseen force. The Vreni turned their attention to the leader, their expressions still filled with distrust, but there was a sense of inevitability in the air. The leader's expression, once filled with uncertainty, was now cold, resolute. "You must leave," the leader commanded, its voice low and firm. "Before it is too late." Marcus felt a cold dread wash over him. Leave. Was this it? Was this the end of the mission before it had even begun? The leader had just told him that his presence had awoken something ancient, something dangerous. What could he do now? Was it too late to undo the damage? Before he could respond, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was tall, taller than the Vreni, its form cloaked in dark, flowing robes. Its presence sent a chill down Marcus's spine, and he could feel the air around them grow colder as the figure stepped forward, its eyes glowing with an unsettling light. "Leave or die," the figure growled, its voice a guttural hiss that seemed to vibrate through Marcus's bones. Marcus's heart skipped a beat and his breath caught in his throat. The tension in the air grew unbearable as the figure loomed over them, its eyes fixed on Marcus with a cold, calculating stare. The leader stepped forward, its eyes locked on the new figure. "You will not threaten him," it said, its voice filled with an authority Marcus hadn't heard before. "This is not your decision." But the figure didn't move, its gaze never leaving Marcus. "It is already too late," it hissed. Marcus's mind raced. Who was this new figure? What did it want, and what had he truly awakened? As the air around them thickened with tension, Marcus's grip tightened around the control panel, his heart racing. The leader was standing firm, but the shadow looming before them, this mysterious figure, seemed to hold the power in this moment. Was there a way out? Or was this just the beginning of something far worse? The air was thick with tension, crackling with an energy that seemed to swirl around Marcus and the alien leader like a storm waiting to break. The towering figure before them, cloaked in dark, flowing robes, its face hidden behind a mask, loomed. Like a shadow, its presence overwhelming and suffocating. The atmosphere was electric, charged with an ancient force that Marcus could feel deep in his bones. Whatever was about to happen, it would change everything. "Who are you?" Marcus demanded, his voice sharp with urgency. His heart pounded in his chest as he stood side by side with the alien leader, their faces set in determination. The wind howled around them, but there was a calm in the air, a quiet before the storm. He knew that this moment would define the future of their world, of his mission, of their very survival. The figure's laugh echoed through the canyon, deep and menacing, sending a chill down Marcus's spine. It was the sound of something ancient, something that had been slumbering for centuries, now awakened. "You've awakened the ancient ones, human," the figure said, its voice carrying the weight of time itself. "And now you must face the consequences of your actions." Marcus clenched his fists, his eyes narrowing. "I didn't ask for this," he shot back, frustration bubbling up inside him. "I didn't come here to bring destruction." The alien leader stepped forward, her posture firm, eyes glowing with a fierce intensity that matched the growing tension. "You will not threaten him," she declared, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. The authority in her words was undeniable, and Marcus could see the defiance in her stance. This was a leader who would not back down, no matter the cost. The figure's head tilted slightly, as if amused by the leader's words. "He is not the only one in danger," it said, its voice low and chilling. "Your entire society is at risk now, and it is your fault." Marcus's heart skipped a beat. The weight of the figure's words landed like a stone in his stomach. It wasn't just about his presence. It was about something much larger, something far beyond what he could have ever imagined. And somehow, he knew that this wasn't just about first contact anymore. This was about survival, their survival, and the survival of the alien world he had just entered. The leader's eyes met Marcus's, a brief, unspoken understanding passing between them. This wasn't just a diplomatic mission. This wasn't just an exploration anymore. It was personal. Without thinking, Marcus stepped forward, placing himself squarely between the leader and the shadowy figure. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest, his breath coming fast, but his resolve was unwavering. "You'll have to go through me first," he said, his voice low, but filled with defiance. His fingers curled into fists at his sides, ready to face whatever this figure had in store. The leader looked at him, and for the briefest of moments, her eyes softened. It was a fleeting look, one that told him more than words ever could. The alien leader, who had shown nothing but strength and authority, now looked at him with something deeper, a mixture of respect and concern. "Marcus," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "This is not your fight." Marcus turned to face her, his expression firm. "Maybe not," he said, his voice steady. "But I'm not going anywhere." The words felt like a promise. He wasn't here to back down, not now, not after everything they had been through. His resolve was as unshakable as the ground beneath his feet, and he wasn't going to let the leader face this alone. The dark figure raised its hand, and a surge of energy crackled through the air. It was a violent force, an unnatural crackle, that sent waves of energy rippling outward. Marcus could feel the very air around them vibrate with the power it held. He stepped back slightly, but his feet were planted firmly on the ground, his eyes locked on the figure. The storm that had been raging in the distance began to shift, the wind howling louder, the energy intensifying. But this wasn't just a storm. It was raw, unbridled power, and it came from the figure's outstretched hand. The Vreni gathered around them, watching in silence. Some were afraid, some were curious, but none dared to move. Marcus could feel their eyes on him, but his attention was fully focused on the figure. The weight of the moment was suffocating, and Marcus knew that the choice he had made, to stand by the alien leader, wasn't just about their lives anymore. It was about something much bigger. As the figure raised its hand higher, the air seemed to thicken with the force of its power. The tension was unbearable, a sense of impending doom hanging in the balance. And then, with a sudden, deafening roar, the figure unleashed a wave of energy so powerful that it knocked both Marcus and the leader off their feet, sending them sprawling to the ground. The force of the blast was overwhelming, and Marcus's body felt as though it had been struck by a lightning bolt. The world around him spun, the ground shaking beneath him, and the air burned with the intensity of the energy that had just been unleashed. He gasped for air, his vision blurred, and, For a moment, he thought he might lose consciousness, but he forced himself to focus, pushing through the disorientation. He could hear the alien leader's breath, shallow and quick, beside him. She was still alive, still with him. The figure stood there unmoving, its face still hidden behind the mask, its presence like an immovable wall. The storm that had been brewing for so long had now reached its peak, and Marcus knew that they were in the eye of it. The leader struggled to sit up, her face grim but determined. She reached out a hand to Marcus, her grip firm as she pulled herself to her feet. Her eyes met his, and there was a moment of silence between them. No words were needed. They both knew what had just happened. They had been attacked, and they had survived. But the figure's power was still there, still looming, and they weren't out of danger yet. The air around them still hummed with energy, the crackling tension palpable. Marcus could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on them, and he knew that this was only the beginning. Whatever had been unleashed, whatever ancient power the figure had summoned, it wasn't done yet. The figure raised its hand again, and the air seemed to vibrate with the promise of more destruction. The storm raged louder, the earth beneath, in them trembling once again. The battle wasn't over, not by a long shot, and Marcus, for the first time in his life, understood what it truly meant to be in the center of a war that had been fought for centuries. A war that, whether he was ready for it or not, he was now a part of. The question now was whether he and the alien leader could survive the storm that was coming. The final battle was a blur of light, sound, and chaos. The air around them crackled with raw energy as Marcus and the alien leader, both battered and exhausted, stood side by side, fighting against the dark figure and the ancient forces it commanded. It was as if time itself had slowed, each moment stretching longer than the last, each second filled with the deafening roar of the storm and the oppressive force of the energy that surrounded them. The dark figure raised its hand once more, the crackling energy surging violently toward them. But Marcus was ready. Together with the alien leader, they worked in perfect harmony, their movements synchronized as though they had known each other for lifetimes. The leader's strength and grace matched Marcus's resolve and determination. Each strike, each defense, was a testament to the bond they had forged in the fires of conflict. No longer was this a mission or a simple act of exploration. It had become a fight for survival, and for a future they both desperately wanted to protect. The dark figure faltered, its power momentarily waning under their combined efforts. For a fleeting moment, Marcus thought they might actually succeed in defeating it, but the ancient forces were too strong, too deeply entrenched in the planet's very core. As the figure raised its hand for a final devastating strike, Marcus and the leader acted in unison. They reached out, touching the ground beneath them, and a brilliant burst of light erupted from their connection. The dark figure screamed, its form disintegrating in a flash of pure energy. For a moment, everything was still. The storm that had raged for so long ceased, the ground beneath them stopped trembling, and the air, thick with tension and power, settled into an eerie calm. They had won. But the victory came at a cost. Both Marcus and the leader were panting, their bodies aching from the strain of the battle, their energy spent. Yet there was a profound sense of relief, of closure, that washed over them. In the aftermath of the battle, the Vreni gathered in silence. The storm that had once threatened to tear everything apart had subsided, leaving only the quiet hum of the planet's natural energy. They had come to this sacred place, an ancient temple carved into the mountainside, its walls etched with symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. The structure was as old as the planet itself, a testament to the Vreni's enduring history and the power that lay dormant beneath their feet. The alien leader, standing tall and resolute, faced the gathered Vreni, her eyes glowing with a mixture of pride and sorrow. Behind her stood Marcus, his presence a symbol of the unity they had forged. The Vreni bowed their heads, acknowledging the strength of the bond that had been forged between their two worlds. They had witnessed the battle, and now they understood their world, their history, and their future were now intertwined with Marcus's. His arrival had not just been a mission, it had been a turning point, and they knew that their survival depended on the choices they would make together from this point forward. The leader turned to Marcus, her gaze softening, the fierceness that had marked their earlier encounters giving way to something deeper, something unspoken, yet filled with meaning. As she stepped closer to him, the air around them seemed to hum, as if the planet itself recognized the bond they shared. As the ceremony concluded and the Vreni began to disperse, Marcus and the leader shared a quiet moment. They stood together side by side on the precipice of the mountain. The sky above them had cleared, the storm now just a distant memory, and the air was still, like the planet itself had exhaled, at peace for the first time in centuries. Marcus took a deep breath, the weight of everything they had just endured sinking in. He turned to the leader, his voice soft but filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, the words holding more meaning than he could express. The leader looked at him, her eyes meeting his with a depth that spoke volumes. There was no need for more words. They both knew the magnitude of what they had just accomplished together. "No," she replied, her voice equally soft. "Thank you." It was a simple exchange, but in that moment, Marcus felt something profound pass between them. It was more than just a gesture of thanks. It was the acknowledgement of their shared journey, of the bond they had built, and of the future they would now face together. They had survived the storm, and now the real work would begin. Just as they stood there, gazing out over the quiet landscape, a ripple of energy shifted through the air, distant but powerful. It was subtle at first, a tremor beneath the surface of the planet, but it was there. The leader turned to Marcus, her expression unreadable, yet filled with a new sense of purpose. "The storm may have passed," she said, her voice tinged with both caution and anticipation. "But there are still forces at work, forces that have yet to reveal themselves." Marcus's heart skipped a beat, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Despite the victory, the universe, this alien world, was far from settled. There were still mysteries to uncover, still dangers to face. The leader looked at him, her eyes softening once more. "But together," she said, her voice filled with quiet strength, "we can face whatever comes next." Marcus nodded, a sense of resolve settling within him. Whatever lay ahead, whether it was more battles, more challenges, or more discoveries, he was ready. They were ready. The connection they shared, the bond forged in the heart of the storm, would carry them through. As they stood there side by side, the skies above them shifting once more, Marcus couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. A new chapter was just beginning, and though the future was uncertain, one thing was clear: they would face it together. And as the air rippled with energy once more, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the first step on a much larger journey. The world beneath their feet had changed. But what of the stars above? What of the mysteries that awaited beyond the mountains, beyond this world? Only time would tell.